It's time to read a story from the Bible. Lighthouse Story Time.
Deep in the heart of Jerusalem, as the festival of Passover was approaching, the chief priests were plotting for some way to get rid of Jesus. Judas, who was one of Jesus' disciples, heard of their plot and went to them. "If I betray Jesus to you," he said, "well, what's in it for me?" The priests discussed amongst themselves for a moment, before counting out 30 silver coins. "Will this do?" they said, handing them over to Judas. Judas nodded, satisfied. Now all he needed was to find the perfect moment to hand Jesus over to them. On the first day of the Passover festival, the disciples sat down with Jesus to eat. As they were eating, Jesus said, "I tell you, one of you will betray me." The disciples were shocked and upset. "Well, surely you don't mean me, Lord," said one disciple. "Nor I, Lord," another one said. "I would never do such a thing," cried out a third. Jesus simply repeated, "Someone sat round this very table will betray me." Then Judas spoke. "Surely, teacher, you don't mean me?" Jesus replied quietly, "So you say." After the meal, Jesus went with his disciples to a garden called Gethsemane. "Stay here and keep watch," he told them. "I will go in and pray to my Father." When Jesus had finished praying, he came out only to find that his disciples had fallen asleep. "You were meant to keep watch," he said. "How can you not even stay awake for an hour?" The disciples were sleepy and embarrassed. "Look, never mind," said Jesus. "Besides, it is time for the Son of Man to be handed over. Look, here comes the man who is to betray me now." Just as Jesus was talking, Judas arrived, and with him was a huge crowd armed with swords and clubs. Judas addressed the crowd. "The man I kiss is the one you want." Judas then walked straight up to Jesus and kissed him. The crowd charged up to Jesus, arrested him and held him tight. One of Jesus' friends drew out his sword in defense and struck at a high priest's slave. "Stop that at once," said Jesus. "Put down your sword. Those who take the sword die by the sword," he said, and healed the man who had been struck. "Besides, if I wanted to, I could call on God's help, but I won't, because I know this must happen." The crowd took Jesus to the courthouse and brought him up against the council of high priests. The council looked through lots and lots of evidence, trying to find some reason to sentence him, but they couldn't find anything. Finally, someone in the crowd stood up and said, "He says he's the Son of God." "Is this true?" asked the high priest. "Do you think you're really the Son of God?" Jesus did not deny it, for he knew it was true. The priests were outraged. "How dare you claim you're the Son of God Almighty? You are guilty, and I hereby sentence you to death." When Judas had learned what had happened, he was horrified and realized what he had done. He ran back to the chief priests as quickly as he could and threw the 30 silver coins back at them. "I've done a terrible thing," he said. "I've betrayed an innocent man, and now he will die, and it's all my fault." "Well, why would we care about that?" they said. "That's your business." Judas left absolutely distraught. Jesus was bound in chains and led out to be crucified. They even made him carry the heavy wooden cross that he would be crucified upon. The crowd were shouting and screaming insults at him, mocking him and yelling at him, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" They stripped him of his clothes, nailed him to the cross, and left him to die. As Jesus was dying, people still shouted abuse at him. "If you really are the Son of God like you claim, why don't you come down and save yourself?" Jesus simply said, "Forgive them, Father. They don't know what they're doing." At 12 o'clock, the whole country was plunged into darkness for 3 hours. Just as he was about to die, Jesus cried out one last time, "Father, I place my spirit in your hands." After Jesus had died, a man came and took away his body. He wrapped him in white linen and laid him to rest in a stone tomb dug out from the rock. He sealed the tomb shut with a huge heavy rock which he rolled over the entrance. 3 days later, a group of women went to the tomb to pay their respects. When they got there, they found the stone at the entrance of the tomb had been rolled away. Feeling alarmed, they went into the tomb, but Jesus' body had disappeared. They stood there a while, confused. Where could it have gone? The tomb had been sealed completely. Then, as they turned around, to their surprise, there were 2 men in bright, shining clothes stood at the entrance to the tomb. "He is not here," one of them said. "He is risen, just as was predicted. He is alive." The women left and ran to tell the disciples the good news. Jesus appeared once more to all his disciples and said, "This is what was written. The Messiah must suffer and rise from death 3 days later. And in his name, the message that we should forgive each other must be shared with everyone, starting with you." And he told them to carry on spreading the good news of God's forgiveness and how we can all have a relationship with God.